So let's rewind the clock back all the way. Let's go
All
all the
the
way
way
back
back.
to the beginning. Hey everyone, this is my podcast now. Actually, I decided to walk away. I'll take over your podcast. That's fine, right? Okay, good. She's gone. We're back to our podcast, guys. So I was about to say before we were interrupted. No, it's you have to wait for the episode to come out to find out. I can't tell you that's a spoiler.
I'm so excited. Okay, so when it airs, I'm gonna find out what you said.
I'll show you mine.
Okay. I love this podcast episode already.
But would you say that like part of the decision, just like hanging out with Timmy, some people would look at that and be like, "Oh, you need to be more disciplined. You can cuddle with Timmy again next week." Timmy can't just like want to cuddle later.
Timmy does what Timmy wants when he wants to do it. You know the rule on my Twitch stream too. Like when Timmy comes to cuddle, like everything else is secondary to that.
When I quit my job, I wrote down 6 things that I would focus on if I decided to quit. It feels a little bit like I need to do that. I don't think it's good for my health, physically or mentally. It's going to just keep making me less healthy. What is my natural rhythm? Raise my energy. Like then, now that I've got that energy, where does that energy want to go? Right? What feels natural to you? But learning to cultivate it and just like not squish it out of myself anymore.
With you getting in touch with your natural rhythm is gonna be like a huge opening up for you.
No, what are you doing? You have to do something. If you don't do something right now, who knows what's going to happen? Okay, good. I hope you mean that because now I'm going to send you a lot of suggestions. Yeah. No, you should do that. That's another.
I love your optimism and your enthusiasm.
It always kind of felt like we were trying to have the same kind of conversation about the world to me. It always seemed like there was like a broader intention of wanting to discuss something about that a bunch of people I think are really concerned with.
What do you think about like beings who are like part of a star family? We're here together to experience Earth together at this time, like light workers. What do you think about that kind of stuff? Maybe it is.
What if
like
it's literally true though? What if it ends up being literally true? Even though to me that would be kind of bonkers. But I don't know.
I think
it
is.
Happens.
I think it is true in my opinion, in my understanding.
Are you good? Are you alive?
I think so. Well, I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad we're doing this. All right, I'm gonna light this ceremonial podcast candle. It's official. Starting. Hey guys, I'm out here with Timmy in my yard. I just want to say thank you so much for coming to see this episode. If you came to see it live, I appreciate you so much and you are just amazing. I want to give you a little bit of an intro to this episode. It's a bit of a different vibe than the rest of my episodes. Super slow and casual. We ended up being unsurprisingly like two friends nerding out about our mutual obscure interests. If you don't have the time to just sit and watch, you might like to save it in your back pocket to play in the background in a hectic moment to bring in some comfy vibes. Still, we got into some pretty significant scheming to raise the vibration of the planet in some ways. We talked a lot about organizing ourselves, organizing our thoughts, and yeah, a lot of different things. It was really fun. And I think one thing you're going to notice that I really noticed in this episode is that Brendan is so sassy. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you so much for coming to this episode and have a blessed day. Hi guys, thank you for watching this episode. I'm here with my friend Brendan. I know him from streaming on Twitch for a few years, and he's a very cool guy. We have a lot of similar interests and I would say similar perspectives on certain things. And he's got some cool hobbies. He's a fencing instructor. and also engineer, right? Kind of. You went to school for engineering.
I went to school for engineering. I'm not working as an engineer right
You're
now.
not working as an
Yeah.
engineer right now,
Yeah.
no. But, you know, you have an engineer's mind, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I have engineering experience. It's
Mm.
just side I like, oh, I kind of quit that like a couple months ago, so
Yes. Yes, you did. And so, yeah, Brendan just quit his job.
mm-hmm.
So,
And 3 months ago. It was 3 months ago.
mm. So, what was your job and what made you decide to leave it?
Uh, I was doing so civil engineering has a few different disciplines, like sub-disciplines that are considered part of it. Because it's for people who aren't familiar with the term, it's the kind of engineering that makes cities work. So don't think like stuff inside your house. It's not plumbing, even though like some of the stuff you learn would be similar. It instead of like single house level things, think like the water lines that like go around the site to like different buildings or like connect you from the source to your house. So there's also like very like quote unquote like traditional civil engineering is doing all of the like when you see a bunch of machines out preparing the land and like leveling it and deciding like what the
Mm-hmm.
slopes are going to be. The design for that is civil engineering,
Hmm.
figuring out the slopes and how water is going to run off the site, and then figuring out what we call the wet utilities, so the storm drain, the sewer, and the water supply from the source, usually in the streets, to the site, to the buildings on the site. Um, that's the well, and the drainage across the site too, like catching water so it doesn't just erode everything or gather a bunch of water on the site and then dump it into the streets or a bunch of mud into the street. Bless you.
Sorry, hold on a second. I'm really dry. I'm so sorry. Hold on a second.
Hmm. Hey everyone, this is my podcast now. Actually, I decided. So, welcome to the Brendan podcast. If this doesn't get edited out by kimomu, by Kimberly the Tyrannical, then this will be my podcast now. Um, what should we talk about, guys? I didn't prepare anything. I thought I was going to be interviewed, and instead I took over a podcast. We don't have to talk about engineering. It's cool if you want to, though. Let's talk about fencing. Do you guys
I'm
like
so
stabbing?
sorry, Brent. Thank
Oh,
you for working with me with this. I think I need tea or something because I don't know if it's like the pollen, but like I'm really like dry in my throat. All of a
hmm.
sudden, I'm gonna obviously end up like editing this little part out. And I'm sorry that I interrupted, but yeah,
No, that's fine.
I think I just need to get some tea or something. Um,
Hmm. No, it's okay. It's just if you walk away, I'll take over your podcast. That's fine, right?
yeah, you can do that too. All right, I'm gonna get some tea though, and, like with honey, so I'll feel better. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Okay, good. She's gone. We're back to our podcast, guys. So I was about to say before we were interrupted, let's talk about fencing. Do you guys like stabbing? Do you like stabbing? Not like killing people. You don't have to do that. It's not necessary. Just do you like stabbing? Do you like moving around? Yeah. Do you like swashbuckling? I thought so. Good. Yeah, you should. It sounds really fun. You've always wanted to hold a sword. I bet. Yeah, you can do it. It's easy. It's safer than other sports too. In fencing, there are only 8 recorded deaths in the last 120 years. and usually there's like more than 8 deaths per sport for a bunch of other sports just like per year. So very safe. Get to stab your friends, they don't die. Um, it's very cool. You should do it. If you want, send me a DM and I'll find a fencing club near you. It's pretty easy if you know what to look for. If you don't know what to look for, you can still find it, but it can be a little tricky for whatever reason. So we'll just like break the curse on not being able to find a fencing club, and then you can go stab people. It'll be great. Highly recommend it. Um, let's see. What else can we talk about? Mm, you guys like to read? I haven't been reading much lately. I've been going out and doing things instead. Sometimes, or just staying inside watching things. Have you guys been watching any shows? Uh-huh, uh-huh. Yeah, I don't know what that is. Have you guys been watching Dungeon Meshi? Uh-huh. Okay, cool. Yeah, I recommend it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, I ran out of things to say. We'll wait for Kimberly to come back. We'll have some quiet time. Let's do a little meditation. And then hey.
Hey, you know what? I just decided that this is gonna be a casual AF podcast episode because, like, you're used to, like, being with me in my streams and stuff where I have, like, tea and I'll just be, like, sitting and drinking tea and, like, doing whatever whatever I end up doing. So,
Yeah, I'm very used to that.
yeah, so we'll just do it like that. No big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so did you take over my podcast? Were you just
Yeah, twice actually. That was the second time. Yeah.
so were you like talking about yourself or just talk like?
No, it's you have to wait for the episode to come out to find out. I can't tell you that's a spoiler.
I'm so excited. Okay, so when it airs, I'm gonna find out what you said.
Yeah, I'm gonna have my assistant Kimberly upload it and edit it. So it'll be good. Yeah. It's on the Coffee Cosmos accounts.
Perfect. All right. Yeah. So I got this. I got this little glass.
Ooh, that's
Isn't it beautiful?
mm-hmm.
Somebody gave this to me. They're like, we're moving and they
Wow.
couldn't keep a bunch of stuff, so they gave me this. So beautiful. So I put some
That's like
unwrapped cough
chalice
drops in
level.
there. What'd you say?
Hmm. That's like chalice level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. It's my chalice now. My cough drop
Hmm.
chalice for now. I got some chamomile tea. And did you know you're like a tea drinker, right?
Hmm.
Did you know that chamomile tea, you get more benefits out of the chamomile by keeping the steam in as you brew it?
Oh, that makes sense.
So I cover it now when it's brewing. I don't know I
Yeah.
forget what the benefits are, but I know it's like relaxing and
Sometimes
calming.
sometimes I cover my tea if I want it to like really extract well at a certain temperature.
Mm-hmm.
Um, although I never measure the temperature exactly, but sometimes I feel like it just in 5 minutes it'll start to cool down a little bit too much before
Yeah.
the end. So if it's like, no, I want it strong, then I cover it.
Mm. Yeah, that's another part of it, totally.
I could I could see that for chamomile too though, or maybe even a little bit mint.
Mm.
But mint is so strong, maybe it's not a big deal because some of the volatile stuff can escape out with the steam,
Yeah.
right? But if you cover it, then it'll get stuck.
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
I don't know how much actually escapes, but those were the things that I would guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've got this herbal remedies book, which I kind of became obsessed with, like learning about all these different herbs and everything. So
Do you
that's
have it with you?
yeah. Do you want to talk about it?
I want to see it.
Okay.
Here, I'll show you mine.
Okay. I love this podcast episode already. Okay,
Hmm.
my earphones are not wireless, so I'm gonna be right back.
Okay.
It's so casual. I love it.
One sec. I'm gonna make another tea also. Oh, Kimberly can't hear me. It's the Brendan podcast again. Hey chat, we're making some more tea. It's black tea with cherry. Um, it's actually Star Wars themed for some reason, but it's the only black cherry tea I've found for a while, so I was excited to buy it.
Whoa.
And yeah, it's super yummy. Oh no, Kimberly came back. She snuck up again. Did you hear my tea spiel?
I came back at black cherry tea. It was your first black cherry tea,
Yeah,
and it's Star Wars themed.
it's Star Wars themed.
Mm. Wow, that sounds cool. So you have your herbal remedies book. Oh, that's a thick one.
Well,
That's a thick boy.
so this one is actually healing beers,
Huh. Interesting.
but it's with herbs in them, so like traditional ones.
Hmm.
And the other one is not teas actually. It's just on herbalism.
That looks familiar. Oh, you know what
Yeah, I think it's on Amazon.
Okay. You know what? I think we might have talked about this before, but yesterday I went to a crystal shop because I wanted to get one of those aura photographs done. So I did that. We'll talk about that if you want.
Okay, yeah, that's
But
cool.
I saw there, I feel like we might have probably talked about this because we both like tarot, but I saw, I think, an oracle deck that was like the herbalist's oracle or something. And it
Ooh,
looked pretty cool.
oh, that reminds me. I need to show you the new tarot deck I got too. Wait, did I already post in Discord? Maybe.
When did you get it? Like weeks ago, or maybe I saw it.
Like 3 or 4 weeks ago. It's the Mushroom Tarot one.
Yeah, I remember talking about that. I think you showed me some pictures. Yeah, that was cool.
Okay, yeah. I posted it in a couple places. Wait, which book did you bring your book?
Okay, yeah, this is a book that I got at Five Below,
That's fun.
and it just like has a page for every like herb you can think of.
Yeah,
Like
140 plants. That's a
echinacea,
lot.
that's like the big echinacea is one of the big ones, the big obvious ones you probably know about. So I love this book. I've learned so much from it, and like I've like been able to try so many different new things from learning about them in there. So, pretty fun. I like natural herbal remedies. Really cool.
Have you been trying echinacea for anything?
I actually haven't I don't think I've had the tea. I've started taking the supplement. Well, actually, even before I got into
Okay, so
this,
yeah.
even before I got into this, I was taking it a little bit like years ago. And I really like I kind of saw like results from it that well, I believe that I got results from it. So I feel like echinacea is like
You
a really,
felt
really good
better while you were taking it.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. I feel bad. I want to pick up where we left off. And we're, cause what were you were telling me?
Oh yeah, the engineering. Yeah.
Yeah, about your civil engineering, and I thought like, I guess I didn't really know too much about it, and I never really put that much thought into like what it involves. That sounds like really important work.
Yeah, so there will be sometimes like the architect for a project will try to do this design stuff, especially for like what the grade and slope of the site is going to be. Um, but it's like it's not their main focus, and it's going to tend to be a little bit more like aesthetically oriented. Um, but especially if you have like regulations for like the Americans with Disabilities Act for like sidewalk slopes and things, a lot of the time like making a site work requires enough effort that all that stuff gets put on the civil engineer. So that and then all
Mm,
the water runoff, like a lot of the time like the architect is already juggling so many things that they won't remember like everything.
yeah.
So not say that they can't do it, but like a lot of that stuff is like what has to be done with every project by someone. So yeah, I don't know, it's cool. And then there's a bunch of other like specialties, like people who design like the big water networks that go across cities, and people who design dams and structural stuff and blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So, God, there's so many things I want to get into off of this. Like, one thing you mentioned to me was that you have a lot of your own stuff going on, that you're like on your own things that you are passionate about and more interested in, and so you kind of left like your regular job to focus more on yourself and what you want to focus on. So,
Yeah, so that's uh that's kind of been a long time coming. I
mm-hmm,
think the right things kind of like popped into place for me mentally. And I guess also like those things were going well enough that when I kind of looked around and thought, could I spend some time doing these things? Well, and actually, like I over the years finally saved up enough money to have like maybe the resources to feel more confident doing this thing.
mm-hmm,
But I think even just like a year or two out of college, I could have tried to to go like this kind of direction. Because basically ever since then, a lot of the thoughts that I graduated with kind of informed these hobbies. So I've been working on a bunch of these things, here and there, not like every day or even every month. But they've been in the back of my head, and I've been making a bit of progress on them for like 10 years.
mm-hmm,
So, and it's, been like just a little trickle of progress. But like 8 or 9 years ago, could I have thought, actually, this stuff is cooler, so I'm gonna take a year or two to explore these things? Probably I could have done that. It would have felt a lot more risky because I still had a bunch of debt, and I was living with my parents right out of college, so it would have been part of that would have been like juggling like their input on that stuff too.
mm-hmm,
Um, but like that stuff has to be handled also. Like if they think I should go in one direction and I'm thinking like I'm kind of feeling myself being pulled in this other direction, then you gotta get your people behind you.
mm-hmm. Yeah. So,
So yeah, it's all just to say I think it's been building up, and it built up enough finally that it was easier to go. Yeah, I kind of got enough of a taste of what civil engineering is going to be like for even like the next 5 or 10 years. And I think it sucks. I don't want to do it.
mm-hmm. Yeah, so one thing I
No, yeah.
that makes me want to ask is like that's like the civil engineering job, the way you explained it to me, it sounds like it's something that definitely needs to get done. So like I
Hmm.
want to ask you, what do you think Do you think that there are people that are passionate about that kind of work?
Yeah, so I guess the thing that really kind of like put me in a crunch to decide to do something else was that what I'm really passionate about with civil engineering is finding like better like larger scale, like maybe like citywide or like regional wide integrations for things, like coming up with better
Mm.
synergies, especially between like the natural environments
Mm.
and what we call the built environment or the urban
Mm.
environment.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people kind of are on board with the idea that, we have to preserve our natural resources and, do things sustainably so that we're not just in this cycle of always using up all our resources or using up really aggressively, or competing with each other to see who can use a resource first, because whoever can get to it first and tie it down is gonna kind of, own it and then be able to extract it. But it's a never-ending cycle, because then even once you own a resource, like to actually get the benefit from it, you have to basically use it as quickly as possible. And maybe not even for the most efficient or beneficial things, but just for anything that'll make money, because then you got to use that to go find more resources. So it just keeps going.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think the way that right now the urban environment and the natural environments are very separated, um,
Mm-hmm.
because of the way that we corner and use resources. Um, but you can, and this is something I studied like my last year of civil engineering. I took like 3 or 4 design classes on this stuff, sustainable design basically, and
Mm-hmm.
defining like what is that? What would that look like when we say sustainable? What do we really mean?
Mm-hmm.
All these things. Um, and so like when I'm working on like these cookie cutter like subdivisions, um, where like every house is the same, and like I know there's extra design you could do to either make them more interesting to live in, or to integrate like their surrounding environment a little bit better, which would slow down the process a lot. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but we're in a housing crunch in California, so if you want to do that extra work and slow it down,
Mm-hmm.
you want to maybe make it more expensive by adding in more designers who are going to cost money because they need to eat. Um, so right now it's all just, pump it out as quickly as possible, just stick with the standards. Um, so the short version is I like engineering because there's this really interesting problem that I wanted to spend a lot of time thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
But as it's done right now, there's just such a crunch. No one does any thinking. It's all standardized stuff. You look up the charts, you find the simplest solution, you try to get rid of extra things that are going to cost more, delay the project, just deliver what it's going to take to get the bare essentials out so that people can move into that commercial building or that apartment or that house and just get their stuff done.
Mm-hmm.
And that is super uninteresting to me. Like someone else can do that. Someone
Yeah.
straight out of high school can be taught to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of, I think they should, just do all that stuff, get a taste of that straight out of high school, make a buck. If you can click a mouse on a computer and you've got decent spatial awareness, I don't even know if you really have to do math that well. Like, can you multiply? The
Mm.
computer's going to do most of the math. If you have a sense for like how a certain calculation, like the direction the numbers are going to go, like do you need to know how to do all those things yourself? No. Can you set up a spreadsheet to calculate it? Great. Done.
Mm.
So I just felt like that was, at this time anyway, that's working with a civil engineering company. Civil engineers are kind of beholden to the developers, right? People actually constructing and funding the project, and the planning departments, right? Between whatever those two figure out, the engineer has to kind of actually design, okay, how's the whatever decision those people reached mostly, right? Maybe we'll get like a 10% input. It's like, okay, you reached this decision, but like that's super dumb, or that's
Mm.
impossible, or no way, that goes against this other thing. I can't make that design work. But most of the time you just make it work. And that was not interesting to me.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So, God, this is such like an interesting topic that I didn't realize we were gonna get into, but I'm excited. I wonder, like, so do you see a lot of like who is funding all these kind of projects, and like, does it kind of come down to like a lot of the same people and stuff
In a
often?
certain area or in a like a certain city, sure.
Mm-hmm.
Like the area of California that I'm in, there will be, well, I don't know, it could probably come down to like a few hundred individuals. Um, Basically, it will be people who own, a lot of the time, it'll be people who own existing properties already that
Mm-hmm.
they're getting money off of. So maybe someone who owns like at least one, like they worked hard, saved for a down payment, bought a commercial thing for a few $1 million, and now that's kind of their cash generator, right? They're getting some rent from their commercial renters who are in that building.
Mm-hmm.
If they manage it well, then they'll gain enough cash flow. They can buy another one, or they can just maybe like save up a little bit of money to try to fund a new project that they want to build, or just keep acquiring real estate where they could branch out. So if you're familiar at all with how people get into acquiring real estate and acquiring wealth from working that angle, it's a lot of those people.
Hmm.
And then they see a blank parcel of land somewhere and go, I could build something from scratch, make money off the sale, um, or maybe like buy it and hold it, rent it out, that kind of thing. So it'll
Hmm.
be people who have access to either enough money that they can get a loan for, X million or X tens of millions of dollars, or people who have that kind of cash sitting around because they're 100 millionaire and that's like 10% of their net worth and they can just drop that money,
Mm-hmm.
or a tens of millionaire, that kind of thing.
I guess it's just sometimes I wonder if it's like just all the big huge corporations buying up everything and make like forcing other people to like rent their properties and stuff.
Some of it will be big corporations too. Like there's like all the tech companies, you hear about them building a new campus or a new set of offices or that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of them don't build new stuff. A lot of them rent out offices. Like,
Hmm.
I guess, and a lot of them don't want to deal with the extra bureaucracy of owning and maintaining a building, or the liability. Because if
Mm.
someone else owns the building and something goes wrong, you can be like, oh, well, we did our due diligence. We told so and so to fix it, and it's underway, but they're responsible as the owner for providing this building to us with like 1,000 cubicles,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing.
Hmm.
So some companies might not want to own either. But then you've got like Google, Apple, Microsoft, Facebook that builds like these giant campuses for thousands of people, and it's like, I don't know, it's weird. That kind of thing is always in flux.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. All right. Interesting. um.
Yeah. But yeah, the projects that I saw go through the office that I was in was a lot of like individuals or like maybe a group of like two or three. But that's a little bit
Hmm.
less common when you're talking like single or tens of millions of dollars,
Mm-hmm.
because that's weirdly a little bit more small time. And so it'll be a little bit closer to like someone's personal vision. And so as soon as you add like two or three, then everyone has to agree on that personal vision and they might all have a different idea.
Mm-hmm.
So, so a lot of it will be like single people either who have millions of dollars to spend in cash, or enough assets that they can get a loan for that
Mm. So, like, would you ever meet these people personally?
money. In the work I was doing, no.
Mm. Okay.
Um, but well, I mean, like my specific role, that wasn't one of my duties. But someone in my office would either meet them or speak on the phone with them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Someone taking point on a project, and I kind of bounced around doing parts of certain designs for an overall project because an overall project has like all the things I was rattling off earlier, right? Like the domestic water supply, the storm drain sewer, the grading, right? All this stuff. Those
Mm-hmm.
are all like sub designs that are within a project. Environmental review. I mean, I won't list off everything, um, but those are kind of like they all work together, but they're individual things that get designed. They're kind of like their own individual design. So um, I would go up to someone taking point on a project, organizing all of those, like how they will come together eventually, and do like a few of those things, or maybe even like a large chunk in like it's like assembling puzzle pieces. So it's like I'm either
Mm.
going to find one piece to stick into their bit of the puzzle, um, or if that's going well, then maybe I'll put in like half the pieces for them. Or maybe most of the pieces are assembled and like we've got them all in a pile, and it's my job to just like here's all these pieces, they're done, so just like put them all together really quick. It'll be obvious how they come together, but that'll take a little bit of work. Um, it was a nice job because of that kind of flexibility, right? Most of the time I didn't get pigeonholed into just one thing, and it was a pretty flat hierarchy, right? I wasn't under like three layers of people. You know, it's like a 20-person company, so obviously there's more experienced people and people with seniority.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it wasn't like, oh yeah, only like the higher up people handle that kind of thing. It's more like, hey, you want to try tackling this? Like, if you haven't done it before, then I'll walk you through it and just take a shot at it, and I'll take a look at it after you're done. There's a lot of that, and it's really the kind of environment that I prefer.
Mm.
Um, so it is a little bit weird. On one hand, it is a little bit weird that it didn't work out in the end.
Mm.
But again, that's also something that helped me pull the trigger to go, you know what, actually, this is just not going to work. Like all these other things are lining up, and it's like this stuff makes sense. I like how this company does this thing. I like how they do this other thing. Like, you know, probably 75% of the things it's most companies don't do them, and they're very convenient for me. And still, I have this feeling that this is like draining my energy, and like I can't get the rest of my life done if I stay here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so when like one of the best case scenarios comes along, it's like, yeah, that's not working out. Uh, probably none of the scenarios are going to work out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so what are the other things in your life that you are working on right now? Like what's taking up your time?
Yeah, so there's a few interests, some of which you know about already, um, that I mentioned earlier. I've been kind of doing them for years, right? Within like 2 or 3 years of graduating, I got into them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, one of them was language learning because I already know a few languages from middle school and high school. So I started picking up Japanese.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of fun, you know, self-studying that. You know how that goes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, another one is herbalism and mushroom identification, mushroom foraging, um, fencing. I've been teaching fencing for like almost 11 years now. Probably this fall, I think it'll be 11 years.
Wow.
I've been doing fencing for 18 years. So I really love that stuff, doing fencing and being around other people who want to learn, like being able to share my experiences, kind of like building a community with people like
Yeah.
that. Like instructing right now, I'm kind of in charge of like that community in my area. So that's really fun. That's one of the main things outside of myself, I guess, that I've been doing for a while and that I'm going to start really focusing on. Um, but actually, when I quit my job, I wrote down. Um, so those are probably like the top three things. But when I quit my job, I wrote down. I ended up writing down 6 things that I would focus on if I decided to quit because I didn't want to quit
Mm.
and then just be like, you know, spend 6 months figuring out what to do next.
Mm-hmm.
I may as well like I could do that while still working and making money. Um, so the first 2 things I wrote down were actually things that I really felt I needed to work on about myself, and that I felt I could not work on with the amount of extra time I had outside of work.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like things that I've been ignoring for a while, and I think a lot of us are kind of forced to either decide quickly on or frankly ignore a little bit. Um, like my schedule has never really revolved around what routine or rhythm I think is best for me, right? That
Mm-hmm.
has those thoughts have been almost like intruded on the you got to wake up on by this or that time because you've got school or work or whatever, and that's a main priority, right? So everything else, like your rhythm, has to revolve around meeting those obligations. And so that's something that I decided to kind of reject by quitting. It's like I'm not gonna do my schedule around this anymore. It's too restrictive. I don't think it's good for my health, physically or mentally, and uh, it's going to just keep making me less healthy. So it's like, okay, so what am I gonna do? Like, what is my natural rhythm? So that's the first. I'm still kind of working on that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's coming together pretty well. It's
Nice.
it's fun watching it just kind of come together. It's like, oh, I naturally kind of want to do like this thing, or like if I have the choice, I can like within 3 hours of waking up or so. That's usually when I'll want to eat breakfast. Um, so if I wake up closer to like 6, then I'll eat breakfast around 9. If I wake up closer to like 8 or 9 in the morning, then it's more like lunch or brunch than breakfast.
Mm-hmm.
Um, But like, does that matter? Does that not matter? That's the kind of thing I left open-ended just to find out. And I personally, I kind of found like it didn't matter. Like if I eat, or I don't know, maybe later I'll change my mind on it. But I felt like it didn't matter. It's like
Mm-hmm.
within a certain amount of time after waking up, it feels natural for me to eat something. Um, and if I wake up early enough, I'll actually have like yogurt and an orange first, and like a little bit of tea outside. Just enjoy the morning. If I sleep through that, then I kind of just sleep through it. Um, that'll be within like the first hour of waking up, and then a couple hours after that or so, I'll have like a proper meal. So yeah, just figuring out stuff like that. It's like that's what feels natural, and start falling into that rhythm, doing it after a while. It's like, okay, that feels kind of like locked down. I don't need to think about that anymore. So what feels natural to do in the afternoon? I do sort of still have like this obligation that I didn't get rid of, teaching fencing class 2 days per week.
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't sure if that was going to interrupt it a little bit because my schedule is still going to revolve like 20% around that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that wasn't a huge deal, but yeah. So that for me, that's really been my biggest priority is like what's my personal schedule, and then how much time do I have after that, after I'm done taking care of myself and doing the
Mm-hmm.
things that like feed me and create, raise my energy, like then now that I've got that energy, where does that energy want to go, right? What
Mm-hmm.
feels natural to use that energy for once I've cultivated it? But learning to cultivate it and just like not squish it out of myself anymore. Um, that's goal number one.
Mm-hmm.
And then goal number two is um, coming up with a better like socialization rhythm, right? Like I don't find it really hard to make friends when I go out. I feel like even though I'm a bit introverted, like I'm charismatic enough that I can connect with people. That's not hard.
Mm-hmm.
But then like making consistent time to either make new friends or network or maintain friendships is something that I kind of just lets happen on its own. So like scheduling that a little bit more. I'm like halfway through that. And then my third goal is to work on fencing class and see like, is that going to be kind of a thing that helps support me? Is it going to be one of several things? Or it's been on my mind for a long time to make that into a lot more of like a community club thing where like no one person is like the sole person getting money from it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how that's really going to what the final form is that of that is going to be. Um, because I happen to know through experience that there's a lot of ways to organize that. And the one that feels most natural is going to depend on like the location and the people who are in the area who want to contribute to it.
Mm-hmm.
But so yeah, the first two things I think are going to take like 3 or 4 months in the end, and then that next thing is probably going to take 6 to 9 months. Um, and I need to jump on that pretty soon, like mid to late July at latest, because the fencing season starts in August. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and right now basically I take care of everything running that class, and sometimes I'll ask for help from people, but I really want to set up like a more structured, almost like board, I guess, and do like maybe like every 3 months meetings, and it's like, hey, how are you guys feeling? Where do you guys want this club to go? You expect me to know all those things, but what's your input? And then I'll figure it out. But then me figuring out is going to be actually who wants to help me do this? And it's like, okay, you're in charge of 90% of this now, and I'll tell you if you're about to really F it up.
Wow.
So that's that's the main stuff that I'm going to be working on for like the next 9 months or so.
Nice. Wow. Well, you definitely really got really organized about how you want to handle yourself and your time.
I I flop back and forth on being organized or not. I write all that stuff down so that I get it all out. I get it all at once, and then if I get like this feeling that I'm starting to drift and be less productive, then I can just read it again.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, like I don't want all those details in my head, like even
Mm-hmm.
every week necessarily. I want just like the one or two things top of mind to be able to just like hyper focus on those almost.
Mm-hmm.
But then everything else is just like brain empty. It's out of my brain. And if I don't have it written down, then I'll have to wait like weeks for the inspiration to strike again for me to write it down. So,
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. It just, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Like, I feel like I work in a similar way. Like, I journal all the time. I like try to write.
I hate journaling. I can't journal every day.
Yeah, no, I don't like hold myself to doing it every day or like like absolutely consistently. But
Oh, okay.
I find that writing things down for me, it's kind of like you said, just like getting it out and like just so I don't have to like keep running it around in my head, and like
Hmm.
I can always come back to it, and I can come back to that space like when I need to. So I find that helps me to stay organized when I'm not really used to like in the other sense, I pretty much like wing everything I do. So I use sometimes
Hmm.
like going without a plan, just like today for our interview, for example, like I I had like a very structured email that I sent you with a little
Hmm.
questionnaire, a little form. So I prepared
Hmm.
prepared with that in advance. I prepared like I wrote a little list of questions in advance. But like when it came to today and this morning, like waking up, like probably also possibly because like this is my only day off this week, and I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna
Oh yeah,
stay in
that's right. You
bed a
said
little
that.
bit longer, yeah. And I try to do like my Wim Hof breathing every morning, so I'm like I'll do that, but I don't want to do it when Timmy's in the bed with me because if I start doing it, he'll just get up and leave, and I don't want to make Timmy leave. I want to hang out with him, so I let him just like lay on me for like another hour, stay in bed.
Hmm.
So yeah, things like that happen, but
But would you say that like part of the decision, just like hanging out with Timmy, is like some people would look at that and be like, "Oh, you need to be more disciplined. If you wanted to achieve this or that, then yeah, that sucks, but you can cuddle with Timmy again next week." But like for me, I also like sit in bed a little bit longer depending on how I wake up. Like it feels a little bit like I need to do that, or like there's something inside me. It's like, no, like we need this a little bit. Um,
it's like this is your
and for me,
time. This is your quiet time, almost like a meditation even.
yeah.
Yeah.
So like rather than setting time aside later, it's like no, like I'm aware that I have like this need for relaxation, or to do right this other thing like to calm myself or center myself or settle myself. Like it feels like either my mind or my body is asking for something, and I could try to satisfy it later, but like right now I could just do that. Like it feels a little bit productive if I think about like this is a self-care, self-maintenance thing that has to happen. If I don't do it now, it will still need to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So when do I want to do it? But it's not like actually wasted, you know. So
Absolutely.
it only looks like poor structure or poor discipline if you thought that you needed a different structure. So I don't know.
Yeah. And it's like you said, like even like the just checking in with like what's the natural rhythm for me at this
Hmm.
time, like what, and even like if you want, like some people like wouldn't consider this, but like I like bring spirit into it, like what's like meant for me to experience at this time right now, and especially with
Hmm.
another being who lives with me, like Timmy's here. If Timmy wants to lay with me at this time, like I feel like that's another expression of spirit communicating with me, saying this is your
Hmm.
time to relax and get your cuddles in.
Yeah, Timmy can't just like want to cuddle later. It's That's not how Timmy
Exactly.
works.
Yeah, exactly. Like Timmy does what Timmy wants when he wants to do it, and he's more in tune
Yeah.
with spirit than I am, and that's how I just consider it. So that he's more in tune, and that he's Timmy, and I respect Timmy very much. You know the rule on my Twitch stream too. Like when Timmy comes to cuddle,
Hmm.
like everything else is secondary to that.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, Timmy time.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, speaking on the topic of bringing spirit into it there, um, I'm like, I guess in a lot more in my past, like I've always been a lot more of like a literal or science minded or like pragmatic person. Like, so if even if I'm going to in my own mind allow for this concept of spirit, I'm always looking for like, well, how does that actually work though? Or like, what's the mechanism? How can I tell when it's like working or happening or not working or not happening? Um, but I'm trying to like make peace with just like following that sense of I have a feeling how this works, and so
Hmm.
maybe if I keep experiencing it, I'll come up with an explanation for it later, or if I have to explain it to someone else. Um, but in the meantime, like I'm definitely still like very like logical and mechanistic about it. Like I want to know how it works.
Hmm. Yeah. I totally hear you on that, and I feel like for me, on my path so far, that's taken me a lot of time to, and like rationalization with myself, and just like every new experience I feel like gives me a little bit more insight or a little bit more perspective on how I can personally understand my connection to spirit and how spirit communicates with me. It just that's such that's I feel like with you getting in touch with your natural rhythm is gonna be like a huge opening up for you in that
Hmm.
aspect, probably, because I kind of went through that too. Like I had my big girl job, what I call it, and I quit. That was back in like 2021.
Hmm.
Yep, end of 2021. And so yeah, I would say like since then I like gave myself the space, more space to get quiet, get inner work done, like focus inward, and like really get in touch with that kind of aspect, and that those different experiences, just allowing those to happen naturally.
Hmm.
And so that has blown open my perspective, just taking that time with myself. So that was like almost 4 years ago now. So
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you're 3 years ahead of me.
I mean, I don't know if I'd
I know it's
say
that's not,
that, but
I'm making a joke. Yeah, I'm not serious about that. I'm joking. I'm
okay.
joking.
Um, yeah. It's just like, yeah, everybody's experience is so different, but we can find similarities and, I don't know, different points of like opening up and stuff.
Yeah, well,
So.
I think you're right. I hadn't really thought about it that way, but I think you're right. As I kind of just like follow a natural rhythm a little bit more, I'm going to end up lining myself up with the how like my environment is pushing me or like the natural energies like around me a little bit, right? Just like that's what following a natural rhythm is. You just kind of respond to what's there.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll probably find myself picking up new habits that I'm not necessarily conscious of until like maybe someone points it out, or it might conflict with something else I think randomly, and then I'll realize, oh yeah, I guess I just started doing this thing and I don't know why.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah. Um.
Well, and it'll be a good thing. It'll be like, okay, yeah, that's what felt natural. That's the energy, right? Or yeah, we could say it's that would be like the influence of spirit or the inspiration from spirit to adopt a new habits.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just going through life, going adapting to the environment and circumstances.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad we're doing this.
Hmm.
All right.
We
I'm gonna...
wandered through a few topics, which is what I was expecting because as I was filling out your questionnaire, I realized I would get to like the beginning of one question and then think, oh, I'm about to start answering the next question. And sometimes that would be true and sometimes it wouldn't be. So
Mm.
I end up answering like 10% or 20% of each question and then going down and filling out like 75% of the next one and then going back and answering the first question that I was on.
Hmm.
And I like leapfrogged through your questionnaire that way.
Huh.
And so I had this feeling it's like I'm not going to go back and reference this and try to go through the conversation in a linear way because that's never what happens. It's like this is going to be an everything mixed together conversation.
Uh-huh. Yeah, you gave me like a lot of really thorough and thoughtful responses. So that was like really,
Hmm.
really good and helpful for me to like get a picture of how I wanted this conversation to go. So.
Yeah, I think I think we do things the same way in that respect because it's like I'm writing all this detail and frankly I don't expect you to make notes off of it and I know I'm not going to reference it. Um, but like writing it thoroughly so that I can reread it before I send it out and go like, yeah, that makes sense. I think I got all of it. Makes me like really like dig deep and introspect a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was kind of expecting you're going to read through it and just kind of get an idea of like how I was thinking about the topic, not necessarily the details.
Oh yeah. So, um, my God, my ADHD is like hitting me really hard right now. I don't know. Like I can't formulate what I want to say, but um,
Is it easier to just express a feeling instead then? Like
uh,
how are you doing in this moment? We just wrapped up or kind of wrapped up. We got through like kind of one topic, but one topic with three tangents that's eventually fleshed out the topic. I don't know. How do you feel? Like
you're
did we I don't think we didn't cover everything yet.
no. Oh my God, no, no.
Yeah.
We have more to cover, and I have notes
But
here
we
too that I
finished a
haven't
chunk.
even looked at yet. So I
Oh,
just
nice.
yeah, I just like sometimes I feel like how do I even describe it? Like hamster brain, like I'm listening to what
Hmm.
you're saying and like I'm formulating a response, but like it's like smoke and when I try to grasp it it's like where did it go?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. Sometimes that's just the way my brain is and I'm like I
I
don't,
get that feeling sometimes.
I don't even function. Like you just like literally already summed up our whole conversation and what you just said. Like we just went
Yeah.
off on three topics and three tangents and
Yeah. Yeah.
like wow, you can count. I'm here like there, but anyway.
I don't know, it was three. That's like three-ish. It's like on the scale of three. It was more than two and less than five.
I mean, still, you're still more on it than me, but that's okay. I'll move on to
Well,
my.
it's just it's my filter is number oriented. That's why I put a number on it. So it's
Mm,
if you had another filter to put on it, then it would look really impressive. It's like, wow, Kimberly is so on that topic. She's so good at that. But it's probably just your natural filter. So it's like people revere numbers
yeah.
and people who can use the numbers, but it's just my filter. There's many filters.
Okay. Yeah, I guess like for me, sometimes since you mentioned that, like I don't know, like recently I've been um like chatting with a lot of people who I like to talk with about um my like consciousness exploration and stuff and like opinions on like world events and whatever is happening, like the energy shifts and stuff. So I feel like when I get into a space where I am like quiet and reflective, I can articulate what I'm getting about what I want to describe very well.
Hmm. Hmm.
In text, usually. Not when I'm like on the spot talking. I find that a little bit, well, a lot harder, usually. Um,
Yeah.
just like because sometimes I guess I get caught up in the, like, not, I get not in, um,
I know what you're
tune.
talking about.
Not in the
You want me to
zone.
let you finish?
That's what you would call it.
Yeah.
Not in the zone. Like if I was in the zone,
Yeah.
okay, I could just keep going and
Yeah.
say exactly what I am trying to say. But like when like I guess like certain things like this, like I guess I'm doing a lot of things at the moment. Like I'm recording. We're doing this for the first time, like remote video podcast and I'm recording and we're trying to do a lot of things and I'm trying to focus on like whether the sound volume's okay. So there's a lot going on, I think, in my brain. So I guess I'm a little distracted by like that other stuff too.
Yeah, that happens to me. I have to manage that a lot when I'm running fencing class because there's a bunch of things going on. So like part of my brain
Yeah.
always has to be thinking about like what's the energy in the room? Are things about to devolve into chaos? Like I sent a couple people off in a couple other directions to do their own thing, and I haven't put eyes on them for 5 or 10 minutes. So
Hmm.
they could be doing the thing I said, or they could be doing it poorly, or they could be goofing off and doing whatever the hell they want and causing chaos. And I don't know. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
it'll be a small chaos that I don't need to worry about, or maybe it'll just harmonize with someone else's chaos and strike them a certain way, and everyone wants to start running across the room all of a sudden. I don't know. I can get that under control again pretty quickly, but then my focus will be totally on that, and anything else for like the direction I wanted the class to go that day, I'm gonna have to spend like 60 seconds, which feels like forever when you're running a class, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like everyone shut up for 60 seconds while I can think and like
Mm-hmm.
get this thought back into my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And it might not come back. Whatever I had in mind, that might not come back if I'm not centered enough. So that resonated with me what you said about feeling like centered and focused. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
For, for me, it actually feels like right, like when I'm like this, it's one thing, but if my attention starts to stray, then it gets I get kind of like this, and I have to like jump between the different topics, and they feel like
Mm.
very far from my center and like very outside, like I have to reach outside of myself, right? But
Wow.
when I'm like when I've got like the feeling of like the theme that I want to discuss, then it feels like I'm very turned inward, and
Yeah.
I've got a little bit of awareness of this stuff outside, but it's like pulling on me, and I can keep my focus inside and be able to say,
Mm.
okay, there's a little pull, so I'll just kind of turn like whatever's inside around and see how that affects what what it feels like the outside is doing to me. But I can keep my
Mm-hmm.
attention, like my focus kind of here, or just like glance over here for a second to make sure what I'm thinking is happening, and then turn like back inside. So yeah, when I feel like calm and focused, it's like very inward directed,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a little bit of talk back and forth with me and the environment, but I'm mostly checking like, am I still like am I still like embodying like the polarity, right? Or like the theme or like the energy that I want? Because then I kind of expect that the rest of the environment is going to react in a certain way. So I'm just going to kind of check it's like, yes, like my sensors are reacting to that, or like, yes, they're all lining up. Like the way I verbalized what's inside that worked out. But yeah, then if it gets too crazy, it kind of like starts dispersing. It's like, oh no, I have to handle that stuff, and then I need to like do some work to like pull it back in my inward focus again, and that takes time. So if I get scattered,
Mm-hmm.
then things get silly.
Yeah, that's pretty much like that's what it is, right? It's like the focus. Like if you can have your focus all collected in one spot, like in the center,
Hmm.
then that helps
Yeah,
a lot, right? It's all about like drawing your focus back in.
yeah,
Hmm.
it's yeah, like a feeling or an intuition of like here's the feeling that I want to express today, and
Mm.
it's less detailed.
Intention.
Yeah, yeah, it's an intention. There you
Mm.
go. That's the word.
Awesome. So, okay, how many people do you usually have in your class when you're teaching a class?
Lately, there's like 25-ish students who show up each time.
Wow. Is it mostly, or is it all adults, or is there some like teenagers and stuff?
It's mostly like probably the average age is like 13-ish, but
Mm.
there's some who are like 10 or 11. There's
Mm.
some who are we've got 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 all the way through high school. But it's clustered, I think, a little bit more around like 12, 13, 14.
Okay.
There are some adult students.
Mm-hmm.
We've probably got like 5 or 6, maybe a little bit more, but they don't come as regularly.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that I need to focus on a little bit more. Um, I've mostly just been throwing everyone together in one big class. Um, Recently, since there's so many people coming consistently, sometimes I'll break them out by skill level, like a combination of skill level and age.
Mm-hmm.
I used to do that a lot more, but then I also used to run like 3 1-hour sessions back to back, and I would tell people to come at different times.
Mm.
That's a lot more organized,
Mm-hmm.
but the last 2 years I've been running it where it's kind of like a 2-hour session, and everyone comes in just like one big group. So yeah, we might split into subgroups for a little bit, um, but everyone's in kind of the room at the same time. And the first hour is more like warm up, conditioning, and a lesson, a little bit more structured. And the second hour, which can go longer and become 2 hours on its own, so maybe 3 hours total,
Mm-hmm.
is just open fencing, right? Just go like here's a few little areas where two people can fence. Um, right. So if anyone's listening who knows about fencing, then we usually set up 4 fencing strips, and people can go and fence each other. Like I don't guide that; people just figure it out. And
Mm-hmm.
once you're done for the day, then you can just leave after that, and you don't even have to stay for the second hour. And having everyone interacting, like kind of, I guess now that I think about it, following their natural rhythm a little bit, like
Mm-hmm.
doing what they need to do to seek out help or just practice what they want to practice or just have fun. I guess there's that too. Stabbing each other is fun. Um, it's kind of nice. It's
Mm.
nice seeing all those like all the different ages just kind of mingle and do their thing.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. So I don't know if I would break it up into such discrete sections again. I don't
Mm-hmm.
think I think that's too siloed.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's nice though. Actually, fencing sounds fun.
Fencing is really fun.
Mm. Do you like when you do your classes, are they mostly outdoors? Are they in a like a studio kind of thing?
Oh no, it's indoors.
Mm.
So yeah, it used to be kind of a studio thing. I used to rent space from the local recreation departments, and then after I stopped liking them enough, after like I don't know, like 6 or 7 years, then I started renting a school gym from the school districts.
Wow.
But the problem is with both of those, like you have to be really on top of how many people are coming because you want to make sure that you're going to be able to cover the rental fee.
Mm-hmm.
And both of those organizations, at least in my area, have a clause where if something comes up for them for official, city business or school district business, then they'll bump you to another room or cancel you so that they can do their thing.
Mm.
Um, and the recreation department was really disorganized, so I would get bumped into another room a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, one month I got our squat changed 3 times in one
Mm.
month,
Wow.
and I only run like 8 sessions in each month. So it's like, man, how do I? It was just very disruptive. I don't need to
Mm-hmm.
get into it more than just say it was extremely disruptive, and I did not appreciate it. But that's a common thing for a class like just starting out or of this size to go through that. It's all just to say we use a church multipurpose room now.
Mm.
So it's a pretty big space. I bet I could cram like 60 students in there. And then after that would start to become a little bit of an issue.
Mm.
I don't know if I could do much more than 60. Maybe I could contrive a way. I really want to be challenged to fit like 40, 60 or more students in that space because I bet there's a way to do it. And everyone thinks like, oh, 30, it's getting so crowded. It's like, you guys don't know what crowded is. We used to fence like with, sure, only half as many people, but in a space a quarter of the size. So if you run those numbers, it used to be something like maybe twice as crowded as now. And you think this is crowded?
Hmm.
No way. We could fit 60 people in here. I want to
Mm.
I want to try it. I'm really excited to do that.
Nice.
But that's what you were asking about, right? Yeah, like where do you do that in like a little studio? So right
Mm-hmm.
now, well, yeah, no, not really. I guess you would call it a studio, but even in like a commercial space that I guess a proper fencing school is renting,
Mm.
um, then it would be a large area, probably like 60 by 60 would be ideal, something like that. One
Mm-hmm.
dimension usually has to be at least like 60-ish feet, or you can't fit a proper fencing strip
Mm-hmm. Cool.
safely anyway.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. So, let's see, where do I want to go from there? I think I might
Are you gonna
start.
start fencing? I'll find you a fencing club.
Really? You could find
Yeah,
me one
when
in my
when I
area?
took yeah, when I took
Oh.
over your podcast earlier, I already offered to everyone else to find them a fencing club. We had a
Wow.
little talk about fencing. You can listen to it
Aw.
after.
Oh
Um,
my god.
yeah, no, if just let me know. I'm very good at finding fencing clubs. I don't. I told you a few like 3 or 4 years ago now when I went to go visit Istanbul, right?
Yeah, I think
Did I
so.
tell you about that? Yeah, yeah, yeah. If that's familiar, then I told you about it. It
Mm-hmm.
was a while ago now. But something because I wanted to know, it's like, would this be a cool place? Like, could I? This was when like I was very disenchanted with living in California, which I still kind of am. I'm slowly becoming less disenchanted, re-enchanted. Anyway, um, so something important to me is fencing. So I looked up fencing clubs, and there's actually like 5 fencing clubs in Istanbul, which is insane. It's like so many fencing clubs. Um, but yeah, no, I'm really good at finding fencing clubs. If you want to start, I'll find you a good one.
All right. Yeah, I would definitely try it because it sounds fun.
Okay, good. I hope you mean that because now I'm going to send you a lot of
Oh god.
suggestions until you told me you tried it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it'll be fun. I'll try it. Maybe I'll even film it.
Okay. Yeah. No, you should do that. That's another thing I want to start doing with fencing class because a lot of people are interested in fencing and but a lot of people also are interested but don't want to do it, or it's like this mysterious thing to them. It's like it's
Mm-hmm.
just a sport like any other. It's the only reason you don't know about it is because it's not like on TV, or like a lot of people around you
Mm-hmm.
aren't talking about it. That's how most people learn about sports and keep up with them. But there is like, besides movies sometimes, which are often like extremely inaccurate,
Uh-huh.
there's like no media about fencing.
Yeah.
There is a huge market niche there, I think. If you wanted to be some like a streamer who just went around and like live streamed all the big fencing competitions, that could be a thing.
Huh.
Internet access would be hard, in some of them. But I don't know, just I guess in that case you could use Daddy Elon's Starlink, right? Just get a little Starlink satellite. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
so
I mean,
that's
there's
that's another
options,
thing I'm
right?
thinking about.
Mm.
Yeah, so okay, that's my new goal now. I'm gonna find you a fencing club, and you're gonna help me figure out how to live stream fencing competitions.
Oh
That's what
my
we're gonna do.
god. Okay.
Yeah. Even though
Fun.
I think like the challenging part of that is like the part that maybe both of us like least about it, which is figuring out all the techniques.
Yeah.
Whatever, we'll make it through.
I love your optimism and your enthusiasm.
Well, if I'm wrong and it's too hard, then I'll just do something else after. So it's
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're here for. Here to
Hmm.
experiment and try things out and have fun. And
Okay.
if we don't have
You
fun,
want
we
to talk
move
about
on.
something? Sailor Moon says something when the in the part of the episode when there's the bad guy, don't they say something where it's like stop or like yeah.
She
What is it?
goes,
What did it say? Yeah.
I'm, I'm Sailor Moon. In the name of the moon, I'll punish you.
Yeah.
Like
That's what
that.
it is. There you go. Yeah. Okay.
I love
It's
Sailor
it's
Moon,
it's
but
different.
yeah, I'm not good at like. That's another thing I need to work on is getting more grounded and comfortable in my body and using my body. And fencing would probably help a lot with that, right?
Hmm.
Because like dancing, I usually feel really awkward when I try to dance or something. Like,
Really, that's interesting.
I'm not much of a dancer.
Hmm.
Yeah. Or like expressing myself physically is something that
That's interesting.
yeah, that I am like a little bit shy about, I guess. But
Okay.
yeah, that's something that like I mean it's important an important part of like being here in this reality is that like we have a physical body and you ideally should be in tune with it and how to express yourself with it. And that's something that I think I have some little like blocks in. I know there are
I was about to ask.
yeah.
Yeah.
I know there are things that like people do to like ecstatic dance is like a spiritual kind of thing where you just kind of let your body flow with like whatever you feel with the music. I don't really know too much about it, but that's something I heard about
Hmm.
to get more energy flow, natural flow in the body.
Yeah. I'm also kind of shy about, especially like around dance. In other ways, like I don't mind necessarily being a little physically expressive. Like I don't mind gesturing a little bit. That comes out pretty naturally. But same kind of thing. Yeah, I was gonna ask, like, do you feel like there's like a weight or a block that's like kind of gets in your way about that thing? Because I feel like
Probably.
for me there is, and I'm not super aware of where that's coming from, but I can tell it's there because I'll do something like fencing and be more comfortable doing that because there's like an obvious goal that I think makes would make sense to anyone else in the room who might be like seeing me doing my thing, even if they don't know exactly what I'm trying to do. It'll be obvious, like, oh, well, we're all here doing fencing, so and Brendan's doing fencing, so whatever his goal is, like if I don't know, I'll just ask him what that is. So I get around the block by being like very goal oriented about something. Um, but that's like the kind of thing you do, like you establish a goal to like barrel through a situation, you know what I mean? If there's like natural energy, then you just kind of exist and go in that direction, you know? Like if you're rolling downhill, you don't have to have a goal of going downhill. You put yourself on the slope and you start sliding. It just happens.
Yep. Yeah, but I feel like I would say that is probably a common kind of block that people might have, and I would guess something like that probably originates in childhood somewhere.
Mm,
Like when you're experiencing like maybe school, like with your peers, and you'll see like the other kids expressing themselves in whatever way they do, and you might like see someone expressing themselves in some way and then judge yourself based on like, oh, well, I'm not moving like that person, so maybe it's wrong, or maybe I should just like be quiet and stay still, something like that.
Yeah, I wonder if it's kind of like a reading the room kind of thing. Like they're expressing themselves in a way that like makes sense, or maybe they're reacting expressively to something else. And at least for me, I think like I don't necessarily cue into like what someone else expressing themselves physically is responding to. And
Mm.
so I'll just see like part of the picture. It's like, oh, they're just, so independent or like so in tune with themselves they can just spontaneously do that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I wonder if it's, yeah, it is kind of a thing. Like, so you start just like doing whatever your thing is, and then everyone's like, what are you doing? Because like this other person is responding to something that everyone else is kind of cued into, and you're not cued into it. So it's like,
Mm.
that's kind of weird. Why are you doing it that way? That's not what we were expecting.
Yeah, totally. Um,
I don't know.
there's just so many. I mean, it's infinite, right? Infinite possibilities of how we pick up the things that limit us or block us in some way.
Hmm.
So, but
Yeah, it's kind of tricky. Like
yeah.
in fencing class, like I'm in the position a little bit of having to decide what to let people do and not to do, right? So like if someone's starting to get like a little wild, then I have to tell them to cut it out.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but if in their mind it was like, oh, like everyone else was just doing their thing, so I was just doing my thing, like I just wanted
Yeah.
to, spin around a little bit. It's like, well,
Yeah.
you can't do that. You're gonna whack someone in the face. Stop that.
Mm-hmm.
But if I don't express it correctly, or maybe there's no way for me to express it correctly to not come off as stop being yourself or you're so problematic. I don't know. It could be received that way. I try to be really
Mm-hmm.
sensitive to that because I don't want that to happen at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm actually glad that you brought that like kind of shift up because that that's something that I kind of deal with a lot now too at where I work. I don't know like if I want to get too much into it, but like I don't know, like a lot of times like when you're working with different people, especially from different generations, like you never know like what you say how it's going to affect another person. They might be really sensitive or they might have like a certain trigger that you're not aware of, and if you say something that like really triggers someone, I mean, it could be all like totally innocent, but like how do you know if like you really hurt someone or I mean,
Hmm.
you can't, it's like you kind of can't really avoid it sometimes, and but like when things like that happen and somebody gets hurt, like then I might feel like really bad or like judgmental or like just feel like wow, I did something really wrong. Like how do I correct
Hmm.
that in myself? And then is there even a way to correct it in myself, or did I actually really do something wrong, or is that just the way it was perceived by the other person?
Yeah, it's like, yeah, what amount of that is in your control? Because if
Yeah.
it's not something really in your control, then you can't really take full responsibility for it. So like, whose responsibility is it in that situation? Is it like should one of you have been monitoring the interaction a little bit more? Um, or is it just, yep, sometimes we're not gonna get along, so
Mm-hmm.
after like we can just go our separate ways and we won't be super assholes to each other just because this one didn't work out, and
Mm-hmm.
that's all we can do. And then we'll just have to deal with our emotions separately.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's a hard conversation, or it's a hard topic. I don't know.
Yeah, it is, and especially like I feel like going through this process that I do, that like trying to be conscious of how I'm creating my reality and how my outer reality is reflected to my internal reality. Like, because like when you see something in the world, right? They say you see something you don't like, you have a judgment on that thing. It's because there's something inside yourself that you don't want to look at that is reflective of whatever that thing is that you have some judgment on. And if you want to, like, that judgment outside of yourself is going to keep coming up until you deal with the part of it inside yourself that is the reflection of that, like the microcosmic version of that. And not necessarily like that you need to change something about yourself, but maybe you need to recognize it and accept that that is also a part of yourself. You know what I'm saying? Have you come across this concept?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to digest, but yeah, it's come up in like several different areas. Like people talk about it a lot, but it's hard to make progress on that stuff, right? Because it's something where
Exactly.
like your reaction is, I don't like that. I'm not gonna incorporate that. That's not gonna be part of my life. But it's like, I don't know. You're right though. The reaction is just like it makes you associate with, right, mentally with other things where it's like that's bad or I don't like those things. And it's like stuff I'm trying to like not associate my identity with, so I don't want to think about them. I don't want to feel those things inside my head. Um, and so then this thing in the outside world that brings those things up, it's like, well, the bringing things up inside your own mind that you have to kind of deal with because there's a lot of things in the world. So I don't know, everything's kind of connected. You can't really have all these things without some or all the others. So
Or even like as an example, so like I mentioned like dealing with some people at work, like maybe I think that they're too sensitive and they took what I said personally. So how am I too sensitive and how do I take things too personally in my own life? I feel like that's kind of part of what is what needs to be reflected on a personal level for me. And that's definitely a thing, and I don't know how the solution comes about, but
you know that I've been thinking about this topic lately. Something that's kind of surfacing in my mind is, so you have this let's say you have this reaction to someone at work, and it's like you perceive that you've offended them and they feel really angry, and that's upsetting because why are they so sensitive, right? And so they're too sensitive is kind of the judgment, right? But have you ever seen someone else be in your exact same situation and you're watching from the outside and you see them offend someone and it's not like a question, right? It's like, wow, they like this other person like is having a really negative experience based on what this first person just did to them. You know, regardless of if it was something bad or not, it's like, wow, that person was kind of an asshole to them. Have you ever seen that happen? And the first person, maybe they even notice and they're like, sorry, that's not my problem, man. I got my life to live. And they just move on. Like, they don't even react to the other person's reaction. It's just like not an issue for them.
yeah.
Yep. And there's a lot of different ways that could go. It's like maybe it was their responsibility, they were an asshole, or maybe not. They said something, the other person got offended, they're like, oh, sorry about that. Well, cool though. I'm still doing this thing over here though, right? We're within like 10 feet of each other, but I like you're upset and it just doesn't bug me. You ever see that happen? I think there's a lot of situations like that where it's like even if it's you, like you can tell you cause a certain reaction in someone else or you think you might have, and it for whatever reason it's just not disturbing. Like you don't feel like you need to have a reaction. Like you can just be totally neutral, just kind of like step back and see it's like are they going to react or are they not going to react? Like, I can just take a step back and wait to see what's going to happen. Um, or actually, it's not a big deal. Even if it's a positive interaction, right? Because if you're driving with someone, don't you want to kind of like stick around and like keep having a good time? Um, so the opposite too. Do you ever realize like maybe you're in the supermarket or something and like you're passing someone and you happen to just notice each other for a second and you say something and you can tell it's like, oh, they kind of reacted positively to that. But then you both just keep walking. It's like, okay, that was nice,
Mm.
but I don't need to react. We don't need to react to each other's reaction, even though it was positive. You ever do that?
Yeah.
Like, or does stuff like that ever happen to you? So what this is a long roundabout way of saying, I think the solution to addressing this stuff, right, like that judgment, is to go, what would I need to do to, or what would I need to embody, or what would I need to let go of to feel comfortable being non-reactive in this situation? So it's like this other person, or it looks like this other person was offended. What would, what inside me is making it seem important that I notice that they're offended? What would I need to add or subtract for me to go, I could do something about that, but I don't really care that they're offended. Where it's like I'm just neutral towards it.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I've been thinking about. It's like if I force myself to not react, which thing is jumping up going, no, what are you doing? You have to do something.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like if you don't do something right now, who knows what's going to happen? And usually it's something really vague. It's like, oh no, it's like this uncertainty, right?
Yeah.
Not even necessarily a fear, just like almost an anxiety. It's like, oh no, 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 I need to do something. I need to do something, or the universe is going to devolve into chaos. And probably that's like pure BS. Like the consequence is going to be like not even bad, but not that bad, but like a total nothing burger. You know, like will resolve itself on its own. Like even though you interacted, you were part of the situation. Like actually, like your continued involvement is not important. It just really, really feels like it is. And usually it's because you want something out of the interaction, I think. That's usually what it is for me. It's like, I had an expectation for this interaction, and that's not what happened. And I'm not okay with that. It's like, the things that I expected should be the things that happened, actually.
Yeah.
Don't you think that's what it is a lot? So it's like, how do I need to adjust my perception or my ego to be like, actually, I'm okay with whatever happens.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Well, that's like honestly the most spiritual thing that can be said, I think, about this. Like it's like you just like back off and allow and observe almost. You take on an observer's role. That's what spirit is, right? Like
or yeah, the path, a lot of the exercises on the path to spirituality, just like being in the moment, is like you don't have to react to anything, or consciously you don't have to control it. Your reaction, you can just be empty mind and do whatever.
Yeah, because it's
You're
like
right.
it's like you said, it's maybe not necessarily fear, but that is still like your ego mind coming in, right, with like needing to control the situation. And
yeah, it's like this tensions. Yeah, I have an expectation for myself that was probably someone else's expectation for me, actually.
Yeah. And if you think about, if you get even more into like esoteric, like, so
esoteric stuff though.
Yeah, so if you think about it that way, or if you like if you let those like woo-woo thoughts come in, like there are thought forms that we can't see, like non-physical thought forms floating around everywhere. Like when you're thinking something, it's projected into the ethers, and sensitive people can pick up on that. I really believe that. I've experienced that. So that's another thing. Like, not that like people can read thoughts. Like maybe sometimes I think like I do pick up on like actual thoughts that I'm like, this person's thinking shit about me, right? But yeah, I think that, I mean, you can definitely pick up on a vibe. It's kind of just like that. That's like thoughts turn into vibes. that you can pick up on,
Yeah.
or you can feel it. Like if you're just like stewing in the corner, like thinking, oh, this person like really pissed me off, like, and that person's right over there, like, oh, they kind of feel like, oh, I don't think that person likes me very much right now.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's vibes are interesting.
Mm.
Vibes, waves, all that stuff. Because it feels like that stuff should just like not exist, and like in a weird way it doesn't. It doesn't have like necessarily like a presence. It's more of like an effect that you're observing. Like,
Mm.
and what's really weird is that if you frame it a certain way, like actual physical ways are a little bit like that too. It's like this pattern of movements of actual things, but like the wave is the pattern through the materials. So it's like, does it exist? You can't say it doesn't exist because, there's like math about it. There's formulas.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like the best way to explain what we're observing is all this waves, or even like electric fields. Like, really, there's just like this field. It's not even energy. It's not energy. It's
Mm.
not matter. It's this it's this mapping out of the effects of one thing on another, like, or just based on one thing, right? Like the effects that it can have through space, and it's usually stronger closer to the thing and weaker further away, but never actually disappears entirely. It's like, what's that about? There's this phenomenon that we feel compelled to acknowledge. That's the best way to explain the physical world right now, and it's not something that's matter, and it's not something that's energy. It's interactions between matter, and those interactions, like energy flows from one thing to another through the field, but like the field itself, like a magnetic field, is not energy. It
Mm.
causes energy to flow.
I
What's that
just,
about?
I just see it
That's
as
kind of BS,
like,
isn't it?
I just see it as like,
Or yeah,
there's a whole non-physical world that we don't totally understand.
yeah.
Like, there's so many non-physical aspects to this
Well, what
reality.
I'm what I'm trying to tell you is like this concept you're saying is a concept in the physical world too that
Mm.
describes physical phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you can't even say that it's like, oh well, we should only accept it once we can explain it. It's like, no, like you
Yeah.
don't get it. It's like this picking up on a vibe. It's like, well, you should be able to observe something. It's like, no, you can just be sitting in a room giving off a vibe or giving off a field. Fields are things that just either we say fields are just things that exist, or fields are just good explanations for things. So like, yeah, if you want to say I feel like this field coming off of someone, it's like, yeah, there could be a field. It's like, and you don't have to point to a particular like flow of energy or matter. That's not what fields are, weirdly.
Yeah.
So it's, I don't know, that's the kind of thing that makes me not really want to dismiss woo woo stuff out of hand.
Yeah.
It's like if you feel like you're experiencing something, you need to pay attention to it. Either it's
Mm-hmm.
real or you're hallucinating, and that seems kind of important too, actually.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, you have to pay attention to your experiences, is how I would sum that up. I think people don't have an explanation, or it's like going to be awkward to like express an experience to someone else who might not be very understanding. Um, you can't bury that shit. I mean, experiences are experiences.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I
Were you
love my
saying something else
experiences.
about Were you saying something else about fields and like picking up on cues, or what were you saying about like bringing woo woo stuff
Um,
into
well, I mentioned thought
the
forms. Is that what?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Do you remember what thread you were on there?
Um,
Do you have more to say about it?
well, that was just right when I opened up, and well, actually, to get a little bit more into my experience with thought forms, um, like a more um, visceral experience that I've had. I don't know. I sometimes I get high. I eat like weed gummies, And
Ooh,
this is
that
not like
girl doing drugs. Uh-oh.
this is kind of like
Oh.
mostly a new thing for me. I mean, I wasn't really, so I have like a long history with like my experience with weed, whatever. But I
Mhm.
kind of like stayed away from it for a few years. But I just recently, like last summer around this time, started trying edibles again. And since I'm in such a better mental state and like more open to like spiritual concepts and um, just have like a better outlook on life, I would say, it affects me in a much better way. Like
Hmm.
back before I was open to this kind of stuff, I would say like I was probably more like atheistic, agnostic, like I kind of like didn't believe in anything. And whenever I would get high, then I would just end up in like this downward spiral of really depressing thoughts, and I would um, get in a really really bad headspace.
Hmm.
Um, so that's why I kind of stopped for a while, and then I tried it. Think like when I was alone here in my place, thinking like I'm more open now. Like I really like believed I would have a better experience, so I think that might have been part of it. But I know like I was trying to also like open up my mind and connect to spirit in another way, like just kind of like an altered state of consciousness, which it kind of did bring me
Mhm.
into. So I do that once in a while now, more often. Um, but like one of the first times I was starting to do it again, I would just sit and I would just really pay attention to my thoughts, or I would just be like doing whatever, like making a cup of tea or something, and I would just notice. I would I would notice myself in the observer role, so I would notice
Hmm.
myself in the way I was behaving. So like this one example was I was brewing a pot of tea. I was using my electric kettle, which like you just set the temperature and it goes. And I was kind of just like feeling high, and all of a sudden I was just like, why is it taking so long? And I got so upset. And then I was back here and I was like, why am I getting so upset? This is hilarious. And I just laughed at myself from like that observer perspective. And I like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I could feel like that love from spirit, that unconditional love for like
Hmm.
myself, my human form. And that was like a really cool experience. The part where I experienced thought forms was like a little bit later on when I was kind of reflecting on that experience, because that was a really meaningful experience for me, just that little perspective. So like
Hmm.
probably 2 minutes later when I sat down with my tea, I was thinking about that. And I was thinking about how I was feeling like, okay, I'm high now, and am I expecting those bad thoughts to come? Like, what if I just like think about like, well, okay, oh, I just thought about them coming. Like, are they gonna come now because I attracted them? And then I felt like that thought, I just like decided I was gonna watch it and let it float away. And that's what I did. And I was like so proud of myself that I feel like I just picked up, I changed my focus, and I just picked up on like totally different, like, train of thought after that.
Hmm.
Just thinking about like, wow, I can avoid bad thoughts if I want to. It's like not like I physically saw the thought, but I knew that
Yeah,
that was
yeah, yeah. But
coming and I let it go. I let it fly away. I didn't latch onto it.
yeah, yeah. You didn't get like stuck standing in that thoughts and like swept away by it. Like you're
Mhm.
outside of it enough that you can kind of be like, well, I can just kind of like spin off of that and go in a different direction. Like I don't have to get sucked into that.
Yeah, exactly. It's
Yeah.
like what are it's like I don't know. I'm picturing like fly paper. If you can like turn it on and off, like you can just be sticky to like the kind of thoughts that you want and like turn that like attractiveness off when like some other thought comes by. If you like get
Hmm.
really conscious and focused, I think you can.
Yeah, I think when you're feeling like calm, like and relaxed, then you can decide how you're going to react to something, how you're going to move, right? And a
Mhm.
lot of things either bounce off of you or you just bounce off of them, right? If something pushes hard on you, then you can just be repelled and it's not a big deal. But if you're really tense, then you'll absorb the force of a lot of thoughts, right? Or a lot of situations. And so it's interesting. The first thing you have to do there is untense, I think, before you can do something else.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's a common lesson from and a lot of movement things, especially like sports or like fencing,
Hmm. Yeah.
right? Like if you're really tense, like, oh, I've got to react to something in a second. It's like, okay, as soon as it comes in, since you're tense, you're going to have to relax first. That's going to take a whole action, and then you can
Mhm.
do whatever you want. But you're like behind. You're going to get swept up in the moment, reacting to someone else because you're one step behind.
Yeah.
But if you're relaxed, you just as soon as you feel like you have to move, then you just move, right? Because that movement is tensing muscles or whatever else. So
Mhm. Awesome. How much do you think that like learning fencing and doing fencing helps you in life in general?
I've been doing it so long that it's for me, it's just like another filter, right? It's like there there's enough of like a set of experiences I've had that I can use it as a metaphor for a lot of different things. Just because like the range of so with fencing, there's like the like a range like such a range of experiences. Like sometimes there's been like social aspects that I've had to deal with while fencing. There's obviously the physical aspects. There's having to observe myself to change, like where's my ego getting in the way of
Mm.
things? Like if things are not going well, is it because I don't know how to do something, or is it because I'm just tired? Um, right? Like I think any activity or any hobby you stick with long enough, um, you kind of cover the basics, and then you start noticing how the other parts of your life interact with it. So everything
Mm.
starts creeping in,
Yeah.
and especially something that's like I guess more of like a thinking sport in some ways. That opens up the the possibility for a lot of I guess like these ego and psychological situations, like having something to be a metaphor for a fencing experience. Like, okay, well, I was challenged in kind of a similar way in fencing, and I had to realize this thing or adapt this way or adapt that way. So just because I've been doing it so long, I end up using it as a filter or a metaphor um, for a lot of things. So yeah, at this point, it has definitely impacted how I go through life a lot.
Mhm.
Like, if I need to jump on something, then attack it. Am I running up against a barrier of some kinds? Like, okay, is it because I'm aiming at the wrong spot? It's obviously closed off. Or is that the only way to get through it? Do I need to,
Mm.
whatever I'm interacting with, get it to react first so it'll open up this thing? Do I need to actually, this is the one I'm worst at, just wait
Mhm.
until it shows something so I can kind of understand what am I actually dealing with?
Mhm.
Those are all situations in fencing because the other person doesn't want you to stab them. You have to either sneak up on them so they think they're safe and you can stab them, or you have to get them to do something that's not in their own interest by making them think that it is in their interest that will let you stab them. So it's a weird like mind to mind kind of conversation
Yeah.
that I feel like is similar if when you're interacting with the world. There's a lot of ways to model it metaphorically.
Mm-hmm. The way I'm seeing it, how I keep thinking of it is that, or relating fencing to, is like a martial arts class with like the disciplinary kind of things and like the contact,
Hmm.
like physical fighting and stuff, and like a chess game. So like I don't know, I kind of like I feel those vibes from like the way you describe fencing for yourself.
Okay, I wanna interrogate that a little bit. Can you say more about that? What made you think of that? Like, is chess an important thing, or are you trying to express something else, and that was just a word that came to mind?
Chess?
What's the Yeah, or I mean martial arts because fencing is a sport, but I mean it came out of martial arts, so like
Mm,
it's just gonna be like a kind of more gamified version of what
mm-hmm.
once was a martial art. So it's gonna have a lot of the same parallels, right?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
The game is gonna try to preserve a lot of the same goals and outcomes, even if it simplifies certain things. So the martial art bit is totally on point. And martial arts, same thing. You're gonna if you practice martial arts, you practiced martial arts a little bit before, right?
Yeah, I did a little bit of karate a few years ago.
That's right.
Yeah.
I always forget that until you bring it up again, or until we get into conversations like this.
Yeah.
Because then you start talking about it, and it's like, oh yeah, first of all, everything you're saying is spot on, and second of all, like you're discussing the topic in a way someone who did those things would discuss it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so what made you choose those two concepts, or do they point at something else? Can you say a little bit more about that?
Well, I guess like the martial arts is kind of like my experienced view of how
Hmm.
to like see your sport through like my own lens. And like you're an
Hmm.
instructor in karate, there's an instructor. There are students who are usually young, sometimes adults. Actually, one of the things I wanted to say was that the person who got me in, or like suggested I get involved in this class that I did, said something like, yeah, karate teachers teach kids so they can eventually have adult students. So like I guess that's like one of the more fulfilling things for like a martial arts teacher is to keep teaching adults and like I
Hmm.
don't know, get them like really progressed into like karate more. um,
Okay.
I don't know if that like resonates for fencing at all, but that's
Oh
so
yeah,
that
definitely.
yeah, yeah, cool.
Hmm.
Yeah, so that's kind of just my lens, I think. And for chess, yeah, and also like sparring. I never really got to the point where I was sparring anyone, but like it just like
How
I
long
guess
did you do karate?
when I was doing it as an adult, I didn't do it too long, maybe like 2 years, and then
Okay, I mean I'd call that like a medium. After 1 year, between like 1 and like 5 or something, I'd call like medium. And after that, more than 5, I'd call long for almost anything. Maybe even before that.
mm-hmm. Yeah, I got up to a purple belt, and
Oh nice.
so
Wow, isn't that pretty high?
that I think that's the part that's like the level where you start sparring.
Oh,
But I
okay.
never did. I never actually did. Um, but when you're in fencing, you're kind of always you're doing the thing, right? You're not just learning. Do you learn moves or are you always like using the what is it called? Did you call it a sword or
They're swords. I
yeah,
mean,
okay.
well, they're sports equipment, but yeah, you could refer to them all broadly as swords.
So you're always using the sword, right? Like do you have to learn moves before you get to start like fencing with other people? Is there any kind of introductory
Oh yeah,
learnings? Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it's common for there to be like the an introductory month where you just learn all the basics,
Hmm.
and then once you've got those basics, then you can start learning how to like put those like a lot of those are simple actions. Um, Actually, I was watching I don't know if you remember Alice. I was watching Alice's stream the other day. She streamed
Hmm.
again recently, and Oh, did you lurk in it at all?
No.
Or just saw that? Okay. She was talking about the same, kind of similar thing about dance. Like, what was it? Like foundational moves. That's what it was.
Hmm.
So it'll be the same thing for fencing. There's like a set of foundational, like simple things, or just like how to stand even before you can do basic actions, which we'll call simple actions, things that take you
Mm-hmm.
one tempo to do. And then as you string those along or into like a sequence where like chain matters, those are complex actions.
Mm.
So things that take more than like several tempos to accomplish. Um, and so you gotta learn how to do just like the basics, how to hold the sword, how to stand, how to move your feet, right? How to move your hands just independently. And
Mm-hmm.
then you can become a beginner. It's like, okay, how should you be stabbing? What is it like to do an action to try to stab your opponent or make an aggressive action? Or if someone's doing that to you, what kind of thing do you have to do to respond and react?
Mm-hmm.
So that and like the most simple strategies, like going up and trying to do one or maybe two actions in sequence, that's more of like what the beginners have to do. And yeah, you can approach that in terms of like moves, or you can approach it a little bit more philosophically. It's like you've got this set of um, simple techniques that you can do, and you know that some of them are appropriate to do in response to something that someone else is doing, right, based on your goal. Um, so how are you going to play that game? And if it takes like more than one set of exchanges between you and your opponent, how are you going to strategize that you get the upper hand at the very end, right, by the
Mm-hmm.
last action, or before your opponent figures out how to do that? And then after that, you kind of get into the more intermediate stuff. But yeah, even after the introductory period, you have to start like actually doing drills and sparring with people to figure that stuff out, and
Mm-hmm.
experience it, because otherwise it's just all theoretical, and you only really understand it after like experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I did that correctly. It's like, oh, that worked. I'm I can see that that's going to work if I do it that way every single time, or that didn't work, or I made a mistake there. I can see like I need to do something else there. Um, or I thought I was going to be able to hit my opponent, but then they did this thing I wasn't expecting. So is it that I was wrong about what was happening, or did I mess up what I was doing? And that's all beginner territory, like figuring out, like trying to get all the basic mistakes out. And so I think that was your question. What was your original question? It is more of an introductory thing. You got to go through that introductory period first, and then yeah, then you're straight into sparring. You've got to start, getting your hands dirty. And
Mm-hmm.
my I have a I have a guy who's retired who's been fencing for decades, and he's happy to be my assistant coach running class. And something he said that I did not necessarily have as a focus was, he started saying to the students, like, you'll progress according to how much you fence other people. So if you want to get better faster, then you just gotta go just fence, 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 fence. Like a lesson that's good to get a new idea, but then you gotta go out there and test it. So fencing is very sparring heavy. There's no like waiting several levels until you start fencing people. It's like, yeah, you need to know like what you're doing a little bit, because otherwise you won't be able to tell, am I doing this right or wrong, because you're doing gibberish. So you can't do gibberish. But pretty quickly, like after the first month, like you should, usually we get people to a point where they should start sparring.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Um, yeah, and the other thing I was saying, it kind of feels like it reminds me of chess
Hmm.
because, yeah, it feels like there's some strategy in there. Like every move is a different, kind of like fast paced chess, I feel like. Right?
Hmm.
You have to wait for an opening, you have to, like, maneuver around a certain way. So
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
kind of.
There's positions, so it's like you move your body some way, and there's a certain area, like there's a certain area of play, and so if you advance a little bit, it's not like the game doesn't reset from that point. It's like you might be a little bit closer, or even if you're the same distance, right? Your opponent retreats, then you're in a different position on the strip. And in
Mm.
fencing, if one person goes off with the back of the strip with both feet, then their opponent gets a point.
Mm.
So, like as you progress, yeah, the moves kind of stack up, and the board starts to look different.
Wow.
So it was a yeah. I wanted to hear your explanation about that because it is a common saying of fencing among fencers to call
Mm.
it physical chess.
Huh. That's so cool.
Yeah. So I wanted to know why that word came into your
Yeah.
mind because, like, well, you're right. Fencers agree with you. We also call it like chess.
Cool. Well, then you did a good job describing it then because that's what I picked it up from, the way you talk about it.
Hmm. Hmm. I don't think I said anything chess there. You perceived it well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Hmm. All right. So let me get into my notes of what questions I wanted to ask you. I wrote some notes regarding your answers in my email. Um,
Hmm.
I'm going to read what you wrote to one of my questions. You said, I think if we can start playing more cooperative social games with each other, then larger divisive forces won't determine our day-to-day outcomes as much. Right now, those forces control a lot because they had a lot of time to act on us unopposed, and there is some momentum to work against. Those forces are further away than our immediate communities that we are a part of, so in theory, we can turn things around if we make time for each other. And I really liked your answer there because it really resonated with the way I see things evolving in the near future. And this
Hmm.
was in regards
Hmm.
to I asked you how, like, what's your opinion on politics and stuff and the way things are going in the world. Um, so this really made me feel like you and I are on a very similar page, um, on like what is needed going forward, um, like
Hmm.
for a change in communities and the way the world works.
I think, yeah. I mean, we've known each other for wow, actually, kind of a long while now. Um, Looking back on it, I think I forget how aware I might have been of this before, but like definitely looking back on it, it seems obvious that like we are both like trying to affect the same maybe spiritual arena.
Hmm.
Um, because we live in the same country but on opposite sides, right? But
Mm-hmm.
it always kind of felt like we were trying to have the same kind of conversation about the world to me.
Hmm.
Or when you were streaming, it always seemed like there was like maybe like not like a broader theme, but like a broader intention of wanting to discuss something about the world that that a bunch of people I think are really concerned with. Um, but yeah, so I feel like we're trying to affect the same arena there about Earth right now.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Do you what do you think about like what do they call it? Like star seeds and stuff. What do you think about like beings who are like part of a star family? We're here together to experience Earth together at this time to like bring people into the light, like light workers. What do you think about that kind of stuff?
It's an interesting idea, but I feel like the like where my focus is too many levels below that.
Hmm.
So that could be something that explains like the context of like how I'm going through life, like how did all this stuff come up? Um, that could be a really elegant way of explaining
Hmm.
like how flows of energy come into my life or into um I guess just into the universe, but then like the flows of the universe are going to have to like step down several levels, right? We're all kind of part of the universe, but like you're really gonna like be affected more by like your galaxy or even galaxy and universe are just like so far above. Like for us, it's I think it's really gonna be more like solar system, and
Hmm.
even solar system is gonna have like less of an effect than on us than just like Earth. For me, like the starseed stuff is way at like universe or even like above universe level, and I'm still focused on just like city Earth, maybe solar system as like a whoa, way out there. What's like the solar our solar system energies is like I can barely like grasp it right now.
Yeah.
So it's like the star seed is like that's interesting, but I always feel myself having to like I guess I've got kind of like three layers, like individuals on the surface of Earth and solar system. So there's a few layers and they interact in a certain way. And I think that's a microcosm of a larger macrocosm. And so then if you go, okay, solar system, galaxy, universe, or personal like inner experience, broad outer universe, physical world, and what came before it, starseed or whatever, those I feel like are all like similar stats of like how things feed into each other. And as you, even if you start from the outside and dial in, you'll get into the thing that's at like the top of the next stack down. And so there's just like a natural pattern that the energy flows in on. So, but I have to use that to think about it.
Okay.
And then in terms of like actually analyzing the star seed, it's like I don't know if anyone watching this is into like math metaphors, but for me it's like similar triangles. Like you got a triangle, right? Or a bunch of triangles stacked inside each other. And just because of how the math works out, like there's a certain ratio. You can tell if you got enough information about one or a similar amount of information about all of them, then you can infer other bits of information. For me, it's like that. Like I do not feel like I experienced directly the starseed idea at all, but I can kind of go, I see how that's similar to like this other stack that I do experience, and I got information about that. So if I'm right that these things are similar, follow a similar pattern, then if I learn something new about star seeds, I can see if that is an idea that resonates with me. I can observe directly about the stuff next to me. But before that, knowing whether it's true or not, I don't know. So it's, you know what I mean? I have to like relate to it in this extremely indirect way.
Yeah.
I don't have an opinion about it, is the short version. But it seems cool. It feels like it's part of the pattern, or it could be.
I love thinking about that stuff and learning about that stuff. And from what you just said, I kind of like, yes, like seeing, like talking about star seeds and like whatever that concept came from. It's, of course, is like a romanticized, personified idea of like what the universe could be. I feel like it maybe
Well,
it
I mean,
is
what if it's
like,
literally true though? What if it ends up being literally true? Even though to me
well,
that would be kind of bonkers. But I don't
I
know. That
think it
stuff
is.
happens.
I think it is true in my opinion, in my understanding. But I think like there's so
Yeah.
many different ways to understand reality. But I think like how you brought like geometry into it.
Mm.
I've heard people say like geometry or mathematics is the language of the universe. And
Yeah, geometry is especially, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And that can seem to really like simplify things. Like that's probably like maybe not, maybe this is not right, but I want to say it's like maybe the simplest way to understand the universe. Like if we like really broke it down to basics. But
Yeah.
like there are other like extravagant ideas, like people talk about angels and spirit guides and like any way we can perceive spiritual energies, like past loved ones, things like that. But I feel like the simplified way is another way that we can understand it and is also valid. And it's probably like, I don't know, like, have you ever seen people having like, or talk about like their near-death experiences, things like that?
A little bit. Yeah.
Those give me a
Actually,
lot of, they open up my imagination to take in different stuff.
I guess my grandma on my dad's side had a couple near-death experiences. And it is some of the stuff that my grandpa told us about it a couple times after she died. I forget how it came up, but he described it. He related to us what she described to him a couple times. And the only thing I remember is the the thing that you hear sometimes about like looking down on your own body
Mm-hmm.
and like feeling having this sensation of deciding if you're gonna like kind of like go back down into it or if it's time to like if you feel like drawn up and out of it even more like away from it. So it's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I.
So yeah, I've heard it a little bit, not a lot of them.
Mm.
I get the feeling from how you're asking the question that you've heard a lot of such accounts, and I have not heard a lot of such accounts.
Yeah, I feel like once you get into that world, it's like you break open this wormhole and you just want to keep going and going and taking in more and more of it.
Hmm.
That's how it was with me. And like I don't know, for me I feel like there's like so many consistencies in people's experience that I totally believe in the validity of like what people are saying. I mean, yeah. So, I don't know. I really like to just like see what people have to say and I don't know, see what it feels like and if it feels like that's like everybody has a different experience too. It's like some people have like the experience like just like what you said like they leave hover above their body and they just
Mm-hmm.
come back. Other people like seem to have really out there experiences where they actually like travel like up
Oh
into
yeah, the astral
different
projection.
realms and
Is that
everything.
right?
There's the Akashic
The astral
records.
projection stuff.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah.
another thing
You sent
too.
me the video about that one.
Oh yeah, there's just so many things I get wrapped up in and but I don't know. I think it's so cool. I just love learning more and more and more about that stuff. And like I'd love to be able to like access more in like a personal experience. Not that I want
Hmm.
to like die and come back because that would be scary, but
Right.
but to be able to
Well,
get in a space where I could experience like something else.
yeah, that's interesting because it seems it always seems like those accounts are describing like going into like maybe not a different reality, but it's like a different a different kind of zone than the one you're normally in. Like the details don't overlap. And so anything you learn there, like somehow your consciousness might be similarly affected, or like as it moves, like maybe your consciousness can move between different whatever it is, zones, planes, or whatever realities, universes, who knows? It doesn't feel like different universes actually, but
Mm.
from the accounts that I've heard. But like the only common thing is like your consciousness recording like these different experiences. But when you get back to one or the other, like you don't bring a lot of material or like concrete details with you. It's like you
Yeah.
can only like learn how to, I guess, either about yourself or like how to do things like move through the world differently, I guess.
Hmm.
It seems like you can only bring things about you back between things. Or like even if you could remember details from another one, it's like when you try to like put those next to other details, like you can't compare them like one sentence versus another and go, which one of these strikes me differently. It seems like everyone agrees that those experiences, like the actual details, are just so apples and oranges. The only
Hmm.
thing you can like only you can be the common denominator between them.
Hmm.
Like, oh, in the higher realm or the spiritual realm, yeah, I read these things about the Akashic records, but it's almost like reading history here on Earth. It's like about these times that are like so far removed, maybe from like our experiences now. You kind of
Hmm.
have to take a lesson of like in this story, someone didn't know to respond a certain way, and they could have realized, oh, I don't have enough information. But that's when you bring it back to like your current time. All you can do is go, how can I develop my feeling of not having enough information now so I can start noticing it? but like that's kind of it. I don't know, it's
Mm.
interesting. And no one seems to say otherwise. Like, I don't know, I guess there's the saying history repeats itself, but I think a lot of people are coming to the conclusion of like, no, like the only thing common throughout even our history is like humans are still mostly humans, but like kind of that's it. So you could learn something about yourself versus or how people interact with people based on history, but
Mm.
you can't like just because a volcano buried a city, in the past, yeah, volcanoes and people interact a certain way, but we have different tools. The context is different enough. You don't have to lock yourself into that same situation or outcome.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Look around, things are a little bit different now, but the commonality is that people are still kind of people and relate to the world and each other a certain way. Um, that's it. That's kind of like the only pattern you can bring back. It's really interesting.
Mm.
So same thing with the spiritual plane. I guess I had to go down a level, something a little bit easier, right? A little more fixed history
Hmm. Yeah.
to get the same pattern. But I think it's the same thing. So you go up into a higher experience and all you can do is work on yourself, I guess. Um, Using opportunities that you didn't have when you were still a bit more conscious. I think that's all it is. You can open up the opportunity for different experiences, but developing yourself is the only thing that you can bring back.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, well, they say, I think, like, so Abraham Hicks says,
Hmm.
like, you can only create in your own reality. You can't create in another's reality. Is that kind of like what you mean by what you're saying?
Yeah, I think putting it together like that is actually adding a little bit extra information to what I was trying to say.
Hmm.
I think you summed it up better than what I presented. Yeah, so I guess like in a sense, like your own awareness is like your own reality. So you can't make someone perceive things differently. You can
Mm.
try to present something to them, and maybe they'll perceive it differently, maybe they'll ignore it. But yeah, you can't create a new perception
Mm.
in someone else's mind or in their experience. So
Yeah, that makes
if
sense.
if you yeah, if you want to call everyone's consciousness or experience like their own personal reality, then yeah, you can't create something in someone else's reality.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that's yeah, that's definitely true. Like I feel like whenever you access something like super consciously or whatever you want to call it, you're still only in like your own personal experience, right? Like
Hmm.
it's all from your perspective, and I feel like that's um another way to say that is like if you believe that all is one, we're all one, the one decided to break itself up into many to explore different perspectives, and that's what we are. We are the one experiencing infinite different perspectives and bringing that
Hmm.
information back to the source eventually when we go back.
Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting stuff to think about. Um, Especially even just exploring like this idea of like I guess philosophically like sets or like which things are the same or like what does it mean for things to be separated?
Mm.
Um, or like in a weird way, it's kind of I think what people push back on when they're talking about nihilism, right? Do you know much about nihilism?
I don't think I've looked up the definition, but I have an idea. I think it's just like nothing exists or nothing
Uh,
matters, right? Like nothing's connected.
well, no, a really simplified version of it, which is all I know anyway, is to kind of get rid of the idea of like distinct entities and to boil everything down to like there's just a bunch of little things and they collect in certain ways. And so look, we'll just call them particles or something, even though that's not really what
Mm.
they say, but you could call it atoms. So rather than saying there's a bunch of different things in the world, animals, plants, blah, 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 or immaterial things, rocks, wood, glue, different elements, blah, blah. Nihilism breaks it all down. It's like, no, you don't need all these separate categories, right? You only perceive that things are separate. It's really just that there's a bunch of like atoms, we'll just say atoms going around. And if you see a lamp, well, there's not really a lamp there. It's just a bunch of atoms arranged as a lamp. And it's sitting on a table, but there's not really a table. There's just a bunch of atoms arranged in a way, or you perceive the arrangement of a table, but it's just a bunch of atoms. So there's not really anything distinct. There's only a bunch of atoms, right? And you make some judgments about how these things are arranged or not arranged, and maybe even the arrangement is kind of, like not there. It's just all in your head. That's nihilism. So that's the nothing exists part, is that our judgments mostly make up what we think is there, and really there's either nothing there or just one thing arranged in a certain way. Where was I getting with that? I think people push back a little bit though on like the thing you said about Abraham Hicks, or what he said, about how you can't create in someone else's reality, is a pushback against that. So in a weird way, nihilism is kind of the all is one sort of thing. It's like you can't really draw distinctions between the bits of stuff. There's a bunch of stuff, and you can break it down into a tiny component at some point, but there's just one thing, right? And if you want to create separate categories, then you can do that, but you're making it up. On the other hand, there's this interesting concept of separation where it's like, if I want to run with this idea of all is one, well, then why can't I create in someone else's reality? Like, it seems like there is an experience of like this separation in a certain extent, even if I can sort of peer inside your reality a little bit and go, that stuff all looks really similar to what's in my reality. So are we all kind of part of the same thing or connected in a certain way? It seems like there is like some kind of separation. So what's the difference? What's the definition of separation? I don't know. It seems like there is something, a certain experience of, oh, that's separate from me. That's not what I am.
Okay, I have 2 points to add on that. So I think that what Abraham is saying is so what Abraham teaches is like law of attraction. So Abraham would say, like, if I were gonna punch you in the face, then I would think like I'm affecting your reality, right? But from that perspective, or from that teaching, somehow, for some reason, you attracted that punch in your reality. So we both played a part. I affected my reality by throwing a punch. You attracted that punch somehow by like thinking about it or something. That would be like the explanation of how Abraham teaches like how we create our own realities. So and that's kind of like
that actually
the system of karma too, like when you because the universe has that system of karma. When you do something, like it's not necessarily that like you imagined it and that you thought it was going to happen, that's why it happened. Could be something else that you did or that you didn't do. But
that stuff is it's hard to describe that stuff, but the more I go through life, the more that kind of makes sense.
You see
rather
the
than
evidence
like
of it.
more makes sense, because let's talk. The thing that seems hard to describe is, how do you, as the person not acting, right, like maybe receiving an action from someone else, what does it really feel like to attract something? And what you said made me think is that something had to lead you into that spot to be punched. Like, you can't just be punched from anywhere. Right? So it's like, you could say it's like, well, you things could affect you from further away, like you could be shot. It's like, okay, but shot and punched aren't the same thing. Like if
Mm.
you're too far away, someone won't punch you, so they'll choose something else.
Hmm.
So if you're not close enough to someone, you can't attract a punch.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have in this mind this idea of being punched, will you put yourself in situations that are near enough to other people to receive a punch?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So you mentally do things, maybe putting out the field is enough, um, or maybe it probably is like those fields interacting, right? Pulling you into place for the right things, like whatever you're expecting. Like, yeah, that's going to ping off of something else, and you're going to get drawn towards each other in a certain interaction.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. That is how fields work in physics, by the way.
Hmm. Yeah.
It- Roughly, I'm making a lot of liberties there. But yeah, no, things put off their, like electric things put off their own fields, and they attract each other. So I don't know, just continuing the metaphor, I guess. That stuff all makes sense. Like you'll move into place based on your expectations. You'll go through the world a certain, and you'll put
Mm-hmm.
yourself into situations where certain things can happen to you, and other things are less likely or can't happen.
Yeah. And it's like the rolling momentum of like what you have going on for
Yeah,
so long that all builds up
yeah,
too. That becomes part of it.
yeah.
I know. I said there was two things, but now I'm like, what was the other thing?
Oh, sorry.
No, no, don't be sorry. Because as soon as I said the first thing, I forgot the second thing anyway. So
Hmm.
maybe it'll
You
come
know,
back
it'll
to me.
come back.
Mm.
Or a lot of the time, on the rare occasion when I get to review like myself things like there's two things, I'll listen and I'll end up saying like half of the second thing in the first one. It's like, oh,
Mm.
it was two things because they were related.
Uh huh. Um. But yeah, it was off of your response before, but that's okay.
I forget what I said earlier too.
Ah, no. Well.
Well, something your first response kind of like satisfied, I guess, what I was thinking about the topic, and so I think
All
that's
right.
part of why I can't recall it now.
There you go. That works. Hey, Timmy.
Yeah,
Timmy's here.
Timmy.
Aww. Timmy's Brendan. So,
I'm not his focus right now.
no. He's like, it's lap time.
Hmm.
um, yeah, I love Abraham. That was like a huge part of my just like opening up to any of this stuff. My spiritual awakening is just finding Abraham Hicks, watching tons of videos and taking in that content. That completely opened up my
Oh,
perspective.
yeah, I remember that. You were on that stuff for like months.
Yes, I was.
I'd check in with you and you'd be like, there's this new thing I learned, and it would be Abraham Hicks again. It's like, that sounds the same to me.
Oh my god, that's so cool. Oh my god. Okay, this is good. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about your experience knowing me. Can I ask you to get into that a little bit?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so let's rewind the clock back all the way. Let's go
All
all the
the
way
way
back
back.
to the beginning. I think like 2020-ish. Um, because like definitely like my perception of you evolved over time,
Hmm.
but I don't some things were like, oh yeah, I thought I perceived something and that wasn't correct. But mostly it was more like understanding like a little bit more like adding detail to like what you were presenting. It's like, okay,
Mm.
I think I'm seeing this. Yeah, that's mostly right, but also there's like these finer like little details to it. Um, which is all just to say my experience of you is that yeah, you're a changing and evolving person, but you have a very consistent vibe, like for sure. That is like this, yeah, yeah, like this central thing that you seem to revolve around that I don't think has really changed since I knew you.
Wow.
Um, you, I think earlier on. you were a little bit more about really specific things that you were trying to revolve around, like singing practice. That was one of the first things, right?
Hmm.
Singing in languages and games a little bit. Um, and now it feels like you've kind of like meshed those into like a larger, like more conceptual thing. Um, but I don't know, it's interesting. Definitely, for 1 second, need to mute something.
No problem.
Who's calling me? Go away. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
1 second. My phone's being a weirdo.
No problem. Well, don't worry, because
Mm.
I took up a lot of your time with a bunch of crap too. So just take your time.
Okay, good. The video's
Don't
still
worry.
there. Mm.
Actually, since this is happening, do you mind if we take like a little break, so I can go to the bathroom? Unless Timmy's on me though.
Yeah, let's take a little break and we'll restart at the topic of what was your exact question? Like what's like my perception of you
Your
is? Is
your
that what it was?
experience of me, of knowing
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Cool. Thanks for watching this episode of the To Be You podcast. This is where we decided to cut this episode in half, so make sure you find the second part. It's going to be linked below in the description. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching this episode. If you're not already, please remember to like this video and subscribe to support this channel. Don't forget to check the links for today's guest in the description below. If you like watching my podcast and you think to yourself, I'd love to be a guest on that show, well, do something, get curious, get interested, be active in your communities. We all as individuals have great value to offer, and more than that, significance in being uniquely you. I invite you to open yourself up to every possibility you've ever dreamed of for yourself, or held back from letting yourself even dream. To quote Bonnie Ray, give them something to talk about. How about love? Really, put love in everything you do and watch miracles happen. Give us something to talk about that aligns with my mission of community, love, and awakening higher consciousness, and I'll have you on as my guest to ask, what is it like to be you? Keep up with me to be notified of bonus content when it becomes available, including tarot readings for my guests, opening ceremonies, breathing exercises, and more, including the incredible Breath 101 practice with Karina Karjan.
Song so true in a world where dreams come true.
Garage.
Okay.
But I know what I'm gonna say. Hold on.
The Garage X.
Okay.
You need a dame sign. Dame.
Dame. Ah, yeah, okay.
Is it easier to just express a feeling instead then? Like how are you doing in this moment?